Hey everybody, it's your old pal John, otherwise known as the History Buff, even though we don't do a whole lot on history. Sometimes we do. This is more along the lines of why America sucks at everything. This was suggested to me, so I'm getting to the suggested list. This is it's actually narrated by a guy named David Cross. He was an Alvin and the Chipmunks. He's an actor. He was in a great show called Arrested Development, if you ever want to get a handle on what goes on in LA. So let's get going, and all right, here it goes. The Gravel Institute. America's bad at everything. All right.
America is the greatest country on earth. The strongest, the richest, the most powerful country on earth. As an American, I'm sure you've heard that roughly 135 times a year.
Yes.
235 if you go to public school. 335 if you go to a Christian academy. We're told that Americans have the best lives of any people in the world. That we have low taxes, small government, and the highest living standards on earth. And most inaccurately, that we're the freest.
America.
Well, it is partly true. America is the richest country, not just in the world, but in the history of the world. It's really hard to comprehend just how rich we are. We have 18 million people who are millionaires. American households own about $100 trillion in wealth, an almost unthinkable amount of money. Okay, so America is the richest country ever.
Okay.
But there's a curious paradox. Most Americans actually have a much worse standard of living than people who live in poorer countries like Germany or Finland or Britain. But how can that be? That shouldn't make any sense. Well, here's the shitty deal. Americans get significantly worse services because our tax dollars don't fund them.
He's right. He's 100% right. And it's true. It is very true. When I was younger, when I was a kid, it was our standard of living was much different than now. Well, I'm sure we'll get into this.
So, of course, our services are worse, and thus we enjoy less happy lives than people who live in the aforementioned countries. Not that difficult a concept to conceive, really. You get what you pay for, said the cartoon dog to the other cartoon dog. And while you might think the reason American tax dollars don't fund as many services is because we pay lower taxes than other countries, that's not even true. When you add federal, state, local, and sales taxes and include other costs and services that our taxes don't cover but other countries' taxes do, like our uniquely high health insurance premiums, you'll find that Americans actually give away more of their wages than most of the developed world.
Yes.
For example, in Canada, for a married worker with 2 kids, all of the previously mentioned costs combined, from taxes to health insurance premiums, make up only 11% of the average wage. In the UK, it's just about 26%. Meanwhile, once you tack on the cost of our outlandish health insurance premiums, you're spending a whopping 43% of your paycheck. That's more than France, Finland, Sweden, and Norway.
Okay, that's it's true. Generally, as a rule of thumb, it's actually 33%. It depends on how much you make, but this must be the average for when this video was created, because it seems like it's maybe a couple years out of date. But we do pay out the wazoo, and
in real reality, Americans keep much less of what we own than in other countries. In other countries, their government takes a bit more tax, but then gives that money back to their citizens in the form of healthcare or job support or a general safety net for all vulnerable citizens, no matter how dusky they are.
I gotta say, on that point, there are a lot of Americans that look at that and they call that socialism, because we've had like democracy and capitalism rammed down our throats all our lives. And so there are a lot of people now that make the argument that that is socialism, and that no, we should, pay our own health care. I don't. To me, it's just getting back what we put into it. But other people look at it differently.
So what do Americans get for the money we pay in? Well, sure, we get a crumbling infrastructure, shameful homelessness, and millions of hungry, neglected children, but we also get some of the worst services in the developed world. Again, our
I love
healthcare.
how this is made.
American healthcare is simultaneously the most expensive, the least efficient, and the least effective healthcare system in the developed world.
Again, very true. I think I've talked to you guys about how much my surgery cost when I went to get my gallbladder removed. As I found out, yes, it was $10,000 for the surgery, but for the room, the operating room was $36,000 just to get the operating room, and another, I think it was another 10,000 and change for the 10,000 and change for the recovery room, and that's not even including, you know, any of the other stuff, anesthesia and all that other stuff. They break all that down. They send that to the hospital. Hospital then turns it into that's what the hospital charges. They turn that into the insurance, and then they deduct however much they pay when they're like, oh, but we paid, you know, like 58,000, whatever. You're only on the hook for 2,000. That's better than the 58. Well, I have health insurance. Some people don't. And unfortunately, the people that don't have to pay the whole 60-some thousand, whatever it turns out to be. And that's a shame, because we're all the money we spend.
Hey, the devil's trifecta. And in exchange for this extremely expensive, inefficient healthcare system, what do we get? Well, we get some of the worst health outcomes in the developed world. We have fewer hospital beds per capita than people in Turkey or Brunei. Americans have a lower life expectancy than people in Lebanon or Cuba. And in the Mississippi Delta and much of Appalachia, life expectancy is lower than in Bangladesh.
Wow.
In fact,
I knew about
in
Cuba.
2017, the United Nations sent a commissioner to West Virginia to document what he saw, and he described, quote, third world conditions of absolute poverty, unquote. We even have a higher infant mortality rate than people in Russia and Serbia.
Yeah.
In every single metric, America does worse across the board.
To be fair, we do look at things by state here in the United States, and this is like the overall arching thing. If you have watched all my series where I talk about Great Britain versus America, and how we don't have a global outlook, look at it in terms of you're from a state, and you're looking at the rest of the United States, and that's more your globe. Yeah, that's more your world, I guess, in a way. Canada is traveling outside of the country. Mexico is too. But there are states like Alabama, Mississippi. I would say the states like, if you look just to the east of Texas, right in here. And of course, Ohio, the West Virginia area. And, you know, some in the Midwest, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then Florida's just like, I don't even know what the hell happens in Florida. But those tend to, because they're smaller populations and they're very, very poor, they don't, the state doesn't have enough to fund what they do. They do drag the rest of the other states down, and I'm not ragging or you know, giving a hard time to those other states. It's just the way it is. So they put in less and they get out a lot more from the federal government, but at the same point, they skew our statistics. So if you look at it that way, that's an important way to look at it. Also, people, you know, pick and choose their statistics. You can go by the whole population, or you can go state by state. So just like everywhere else, it all depends on what facts you choose.
So why is healthcare so expensive? Because it's so complicated. You have to look for in-network physicians, schedule an established care appointment, beg for coverage from your insurance company that couldn't care less about you.
True.
And that's if you're lucky enough to have good insurance.
Actually, that's true. If your doctor tells you you really need this particular cancer drug, the insurance may or may not pay for it. So who's the doctor? Who's the medical expert? It's the insurance company.
Compare that to Britain and all of those other evil, socialist-like countries where it's
Healthy
simple.
land.
Public hospitals provide free treatment to people who need it. That's it. I'll repeat that. Public hospitals provide free treatment to people who need it.
Yep.
And here's the best part. Even though Britain offers healthcare for free, their system is actually a lot cheaper to run than ours.
Yeah.
Per capita healthcare spending in the US is almost 3 times what it is in Britain, and almost 5 times what Canadians spend. In fact, Americans spend the most per person of any country in the world for healthcare. But the free market is more efficient, you screech. But in America, private systems often aren't efficient at all. Private drug companies have an incentive to charge whatever they can get away with for pharmaceuticals.
Yep.
In Canada, a carton of...
There was just about a case. There was a case of that went to the courts about somebody who had I think it wasn't. Maybe it was insulin. A new insulin thing. They created it. They got the rights to it. And they were charging $300 for whatever the EpiPen was. It was a large case about 2 or 3 years ago, and it ended up being that was called price gouging, which is illegal because we get like hurricanes and stuff like that, and then people have a run on gas. So they kind of if things are skewed too much, there's, I guess, a ruling where they can call it price gouging and fix prices when needed, I guess, or not allow them to go above a certain amount.
Insulin costs about $20. In the U.S., it costs $300.
There you go. There it is.
And with private insurance companies footing the bill, hospitals have an incentive to get as much money out of patients as possible, too.
Yeah.
In 2015, the average cost of an MRI scan in the U.S. was $1,119, but it was only $215 in Australia. Spain, about $181. And our healthcare system is so inefficient that we spend over a third of our cost on administration. The United States spends significantly more on administration than we spend on preventative or long-term healthcare. That's just not smart. Okay, we get it. We all know that American healthcare is so much more expensive, you say, but that's the cost of having the freest freedom in God's favorite country. Well, guess what? Medical procedures that are totally free in Britain, like giving birth, cost tens of thousands of dollars in the United States.
It's true.
I mean, you want to talk about the cost of freedom. Sadly, because of these high costs, Americans often avoid going to the doctor, something almost half the population say they do.
Yep, I've done
Shoddy or non-existent health insurance, Americans will wait until their conditions force them into the emergency room where treatment is far more expensive.
Yep.
Again, not a smart system. Quite often, they end up putting off medical visits and dying. Susan Finley, a 53-year-old Walmart employee in Colorado, got pneumonia and took 1 day off of work beyond what Walmart's policy allows. So of course, Walmart's gonna Walmart, which they did by firing her. Without her job, she lost her nominal health care coverage, she struggled to find new work, and after avoiding a visit to the doctor for flu-like symptoms, she was found dead in her apartment.
I don't know if that's true. That's just
when
probably
Americans
an example.
do manage to get treated, they frequently can't afford it. Simple, life-saving treatments can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if they don't have really good insurance, they're forced to take on medical debt. Tens of millions of Americans owe medical debt, often into the tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, in a country like Britain or Norway, medical debt is almost unheard of. But hey,
it's true. God, that's, and the worst part is that they have lobbyists that lobby to get, they pay, representatives to get into office. And so they won't change the system. This lobbying thing it's crazy. It kept big tobacco companies from putting, warnings on cigarette boxes and all that other stuff.
Hey, that's why GoFundMe is such a critical component of American healthcare.
It's true.
1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is now for medical bills. I'll repeat that. 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is now for medical bills. America is such a strong, powerful, rich, and great country that its citizens have to beg strangers on the internet for money so they can get life-saving treatments that are free in the rest of the developed world.
Yeah.
But hey, that's just healthcare. Americans get terrible deals wherever you look. Let's take work, for example.
Christ.
Americans work longer hours than people in any other rich country in the world, and that's not because they enjoy sleep deprivation and not seeing their families for days at a time. It's because they don't want to starve, or freeze, or die. See, America has the least generous job support programs, the least generous family benefits, and the least generous unemployment benefits of any wealthy country.
Yeah.
It's one of the only countries on Earth that
Although define wealthy country, because I'd like to know where the cutoff is.
doesn't guarantee paid time off for vacations. It doesn't even help provide paid time off for parents who just had a child. And it's not coincidental that we're also one of the most hostile countries to workers' rights.
Oh, yeah.
America has one of the lowest unionization rates in the entire world. Maybe this deprivation, our refusal to give people the means to lead a good, dignified life commensurate with how rich our country is, can explain a bit of what we've seen in the United States over the last few decades. Fraying communities, rising rates of depression and suicide, huge numbers of deaths from drug overdoses. These so-called deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdoses, alcoholic liver disease, they're one big reason why American life expectancy has actually started to decline over the last few years. And with such poor conditions, it's not a...
And that's not from dying of old age, of course. That is dying from addiction. There's a place called, what is it? Not Samson Street. There's a street in Philadelphia I'm north of Philadelphia, between Philadelphia and New York City. And there's a street, and I can't think of what it's called. And all it is just people that are strung out on fentanyl, meth. I mean, you name it, they're doing it. And you just drive your car by and you see people just sort of slumped over, walking. You see drug deals right out in the open. It's really sad.
Surprised that poverty is so rampant in the United States.
Yeah.
America devotes a smaller percentage of spending on social welfare than any other industrialized economy because, say it with me, socialism is evil.
That's right. Socialism is evil in the U.S., and people are trained and conditioned to believe that it is evil, and it's not. Europe, actually, as far as I'm concerned, has quite a decent mix. I mean, complain all you want. I mean, I get it. Everybody complains about it. You have a right to complain about anything. I always thought that, the medicine there, the way that you guys work is just mentally, it's just mentally better for your health. I mean, you look at it here. We have this weird stigma that we've been taught that socialism is evil. And the other thing is, people don't know the difference between socialism and communism. There's no, as far as people are concerned, there's no difference.
It's evil. Go to Denmark and try telling those happy, healthy families enjoying their paid vacation that their system of government is evil. Guess what? I guarantee they'll know you're an American. But I digress. America also has the highest rate of child poverty of any developed country, and the highest percentage of workers earning significantly less than the national median income. That seems pretty evil to me, especially since such a tiny fraction take as much of your money for themselves and their families as you will let them.
Yep.
All the while, both parties smile and shake hands.
I love how that was like a TV guide kind of thing, the way it went down. That was under the Bloomberg channel, the top 1%. If you know who former Mayor Bloomberg is.
Across every single metric, no people accept a worse deal than Americans today.
Mm-hmm.
High taxes, high cost of living for next to nothing in return from the government.
Yep.
The most expensive healthcare system for the worst health outcomes. More money taken from workers for the highest rate of child poverty. We are the richest country in the history of the world, but we have fewer miles of high-speed rail than Uzbekistan. We are the greatest country in the world, yet we have the most people in prison of any country, and the highest incarceration rate as well, and a higher rate of police killings than in Angola and Sudan. America is bad at everything because instead of choosing to make life better for people through a public healthcare system or more generous childcare policies or better public transit or programs that allow people to spend more time with their families, American law is designed and crafted to protect a class of parasitical middleman industries. Instead of using a proportionally tiny piece of the massive amount of the wealth in this country to make people's lives healthier and happier, most of our elected leaders are, and have been for generations, engaged in a massive project of looting.
It's true. Most of I'd say the 1% and the people that are in politics, they essentially are looting. There was somebody that said something along the lines of they keep the wages in America and the services in America just to the point where it keeps people from rioting. And this kind of started in the 80s, 90s. the way it kind of went. I mean, there was a change around then where, there were high taxes on richer people, and now it's just all about finding the loophole in the system. Ugh.
Gently and lovingly guiding us.
No, and we had pensions then. Hardly anybody has a pension now.
Much money as possible from working people into the pockets of the well-connected and the ultra-rich. Think about that as we start hearing about the inevitable rise in homelessness, poverty, starvation, and sickness that will occur during these coming months and years in the greatest, strongest, richest, most powerful country on the face of the earth. I'm David Cross for the Gravel Institute.
Okay, clearly this is coming from a very liberal point of view. And, there are some very good points in here. There are some other points that are, there are some that are fabricated. The healthcare one that's a big deal. If you can afford good insurance, you'll be just fine. Really, you will be. And that's okay. Let me know, was there anything that stood out to you on this that maybe you didn't know? Just trying to think if there was anything else in here. Career services, yep, that's a real rough one. The other thing about career services is we get a thing called a 401k. It's not a pension plan. We take money from our salary and we put it aside, and the big deal is that that's pre-tax money. But of course, it grows and grows and grows, and it's a percentage of our paycheck that goes into this bank account. And you can grab funds. I don't know if you guys do that wherever you're watching, but then you're able to take the money out when you're over 62 or 65 without having a penalty. Yeah, I said penalty. So if you lose your job, I think you can borrow against it for a little bit, but you can't take the money out permanently. If you do, it's something like you get taxed like, I don't know how much, like God, no, it's astronomical. But you can start then taking money out at, I think, age 65, and that's your own money. And then they tax you, I think, then they start taxing you on how much you take out and how much you made on it. It's just weird. What else do we have? I do want to know who that's right, the drug use. Yeah. That's always been a problem. And yeah, we do lock a lot of people up. And some of it is because of, the makeup of our country. We've become really divided. I can tell this was made during the Trump years. It's not necessarily this bad currently, but it had gotten really, really bad. I mean, to the point where in Atlanta, there were hate crimes on anyone who is Asian because of the coronavirus. America is a very racist country. All right, guys, let me know what you think. I'll talk to you later, and keep sending the information in, and keep sending your ideas in, and I'll keep doing this.